So, welcome everyone to the second iteration of the Offside Podcast, wherever you're listening to it from, be it US, Bangladesh, Cyprus, whatever. Welcome back to all our 25 viewers, hopefully more this week. So let's just get straight into it. We're starting with Manchester United, as they had the biggest games this week, I would have to say. Let's start off with the Spurs game, the most dominant United performance we've seen this season. Played well. We're going to get to the controversy a bit later. But straight off the bat, let's start with Paul. What did you make of this game? What did you make of the performance?
I put it into the group chat when I was watching the Spurs game, and I have to apologize for what I've said about Fred. At least the way he played in that Spurs game, he pretty much proved me wrong. He showed that he has the capability to play on that top level. Now we just want to see him do it on a regular basis. And we kind of saw, at least this was my feeling about the Chelsea game, was how we've got a good starting squad, which can now compete. Tuchel's got them working well. They're working as a team, and we can see that they can compete against the teams like Spurs and Chelsea. But then as soon as he starts making changes to that starting the lineup, when he starts bringing McTominay in or Fred comes back in, it starts to lose a bit of click. So I think we're seeing. I keep saying this about United. I think we keep seeing progress and an improvement, but just as we could take off and compete, we flop. So I just wait to see if this is again getting excited about maybe Man United finally turning the corner, or are we going to end up flopping again just before the Christmas break?
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. The game started off really well for United. There was pure domination for 35 minutes, arguably the first half, until Kovacic was basically brought into the game. Then the game kind of calmed down a little bit. Yet, nevertheless, there was a controversial penalty that was given, and United conceded. I'll go to Arad next. Was it a penalty? Was it not a penalty? Can we use it as an excuse for a goal, or?
No, I don't think there's any excuses really. I think I always say you never want to have to give the ref a decision to make, and McTominay gave the ref a decision to make. I think it's one of those penalties that I think if you give that, you've got to give one in the Arsenal game. I know we'll go through that later, but I think a similar situation happened with Gabriel Jesus. And instances like that really do take place 3 to 4 times a game, especially when you're having teams, whipping corners into the box, not going short. That's bound to happen, especially in the Premier League. But again, I say McTominay's not done the smartest thing there. He's left the ref with a decision to make. And as we all know in the Premier League, you don't want to leave the refs in controversy, because more often than not, they'll get it wrong. But like you said, the game changed from the 35th minute, when Kovacic came on. And I think props to Ten Hag and the United team for the first 35 minutes, because not many teams go to Stamford Bridge and force a tactical change in the first half. And they did well. But of course, if you don't take your chances, and that's what I kept thinking the whole 35 minutes. I said, in games, you're going to have periods of dominance. That's normal. But if you're not taking advantage and putting the ball in the net during those periods of dominance, then you're going to suffer, because you're not going to dominate a top side like Chelsea for 90 minutes. And, we paid the price for it. And I think a draw in the end was a fair result. I can't say we deserve to win based on a 90-minute performance, but certainly first 30, 35 minutes, we were on top.
Meredith is shaking his head.
Are we watching the same game? Or are we actually watching the same game?
So
United deserved to win on all bases. On every basis, we dominated them. We went to Stamford Bridge. We were the home team with 67% possession in the first half. We created, I think, double or triple their chances. The only threat they had was a penalty, which is so soft, it's not going to be given in 9 out of 10 games in the Premier League. It's a contact sport. I don't know when football, especially defending a corner, became you cannot touch your opposition player. And he did go down easy. You have to say he was on his way down. Of course, McTominay should never put himself in that situation. I agree. But the fact you say Chelsea deserved a draw, the fact that United fans, I feel like we should be gutted getting a draw out of that game. Losing it would be completely unfair, but a draw is the least of what we should have got. 3 points is what was ambitious at the start of the game, but during the game, that was the way the game was going. So I don't agree with
Yeah,
you. Draw is not a
but
better
you've
result
also
then.
got to remember we didn't put the ball in the net. Again, when you're dominating a game, if you're not scoring, it's meaningless. And we've seen it with City time and time again when they're not winning games. The rare occasion that they draw a game against a Brighton or a West Ham or whatever it might be.
Ten Hag sent Potter back to Brighton with his tactical genius. So 35 minutes at home and you're making a tactical sub against United, who are struggling, and Chelsea, who are apparently a better top 4 contender than we are. When we played out of our top 10 Premier League teams, we played 9 of them already in our first 11 games. The next 10 games we've got, we're playing the bottom 10. Tell me that we're not top 4 contenders with a strong shot to even going towards Arsenal's level, where they're actually, in some ways, challenging for a title. We've played most of our difficult games already in the first half of the season. So
I'll tell you for free, we are not challenging for a title this season, and we are not on Arsenal's level this season. I think the Newcastle game is a prime example, and I'm sure Paul will back me up on this, that when you're playing teams that sit in the back and put 4-4-2, potentially 10 behind the ball, we struggle breaking them down. And those are the kinds of games we're going to have coming up now. With all due respect to the teams coming, they're not as big as the ones we've played, like you've mentioned. So they're going to have 9-10 men behind the ball for 80-90% of the time when we're having the ball. So unless we can find that click in the final third, which we haven't done even in the games we've dominated, we're not going to see us challenging.
Spurs did that against us. Bruno
so.
created like, what was it, 15 chances that game? We had 27 shots on goal.
And we scored two.
Lloris became Superman. What can you say?
I mean, I see your point. I think we should move on to the next discussion. Probably, I would say, even with United playing well, it dominated the week. It still dominates the headlines. The actions of Ronaldo, something reminding me of, the preview best and 12-year-old boy who, throws his toys out the pram because, he didn't get an ice cream sandwich from a shop, something like that case. Again, as we touched on before, United's best performance of the season, arguably last couple of years. Yet all the discussions about him, and we're kind of heading towards this mini United civil war with some pundits divided, others backing Ronaldo. Before I open the floor for discussion, I'll just mention that Arsenal had the similar situation with Ozil when Arteta came in. Basically, circumstances were nearly the same. Top player at the club, highest earner, throws toys out of the pram and tries to make it all on himself. Arteta dealt with it. The squad was poisonous. There were leaks before with Ozil in the squad. Ozil was outcasted. This squad all the way became healthier, and the team just blossomed into what it is now, partly because of the Ozil situation. The manager needs to be back no matter what.
100%.
That's what was said before Ten Hag came in. But I know there's different points of discussion, and let's open the floor up with Mered as our Ronaldo fanboy of the podcast.
Yeah, I'm probably going to be saying something a bit more controversial than the lads probably disagree with me. I think Ronaldo has every right to feel the way he does. I'm not justifying his actions. I'm justifying his behavior to an extent of understanding that he is a top player who's played at the top level for 20 plus years, always consistently being number 1, number 2 in the world. Now in the last 2 years, he's played for a United team, which is arguably our worst team in the last 10 years. Last season, he was our top scorer. He was on level with the likes of Harry Kane and Heung-min Son in terms of performances and getting the goals in. Again, you're talking about a team which lacked any creativity in the midfield, no chances created. The wingers were the likes of Rashford and Greenwood at times, who would just cut in and shoot. He didn't get any delivery. And now he's gone to being a bench warmer, watching Rashford still miss sitter after sitter, trying to smash the ball at the keeper instead of placing it in a corner. You can say his frustrations are justified. So yes, you have to back the manager, and his actions weren't great, but can you really blame him? No, I think he's perfectly in his reason to act the way he did. And a superstar like him, he wanted to move out in the summer. either give him his move or give him his game time. You can't have it both ways, even as a club. But yeah, let the other guys have a go, because I don't agree.
Okay, I'll move on to Paul, and as you've previously touched upon, yes, he was one of your best performers last year. However, we've seen it this year and partly last year. United play better football when Ronaldo's not on the squad. Some players feel free to express themselves and feel that they can perform better. Paul, what do you feel about the situation? Do you think pundits such as Keane, who are now backs against the wall defending Ronaldo no matter what, have an opinion in that? Do you think they're correct, or do you think a manager is the trendsetter and the manager should be the one that's making decisions in the squad? And if he makes a decision, the fans and the pundits should stick behind him, especially if they're United supporters.
What pundits say, I don't think matters too much. I watched Roy Keane and Gary Neville heated debate, and that was quite interesting to see. And I can kind of understand where Merad and Roy Keane come from, because
the fact you compare me to Roy Keane,
it is a shame. It is a shame to see how his career is ending. And of course, I don't like watching him sit on the bench. I wish he had moved on in the summer. I think, from my understandings, was that United were willing to let him move, but no club wanted him. No European club that he wanted to move to wanted him. And the situation is only getting worse. Regards to the team, I think a healthy team is kind of like you mentioned with Arsenal, when everyone is kind of rowing the boat into the same direction. When you've got 10 and 10 people on each side of the boat and they're all rowing in sync. That's what you need for a team right now, especially after the toxic last few years that we've had. And Ronaldo's definitely not on that same page. He's not rowing the boat for Man United. What's best for United? Otherwise, he would be sitting on the bench. He would be coming on in the 89th minute. As much as he doesn't like it, he would be sucking it up and he'd be doing it. But he's not. So I think it is best for both parties that he does just move on. I just don't know where he'll go, because in his mind, he still thinks he can play 90 minutes on Champions League standard, but no Champions League standard team wants him.
Okay, and just to round out the discussion with Arad, so what do you think is going to happen to Ronaldo? Is he leaving in January? Will he terminate his contract in the next couple of weeks and move on? And where do you think he'll end up? Sporting, US, Saudi Arabia?
I think I have to disagree, to be honest, with the idea that no top team in Europe wants Ronaldo. I think that there's different stories around what happened in the summer. Based on United and what we know of the Glazers and the way that club has been run, Ronaldo's got a year left on his contract. Ronaldo is a cash cow for the Glazers. The amount of shirts he sells every year alone pay his dividends. Pay their dividends and some. And it's not so much that the club didn't have options to sell him. I think the club wanted money because he's got a year left on his contract and said, we're not going to let him go for free. And of course, as we all know, Ronaldo's on £500,000 a week. So any club that takes him is already taking that investment that they might make in a player, putting it into his salary. Therefore, they're going to want a free transfer. And United clearly didn't want that. I think anyway, this is if buts and maybes. It doesn't really matter what happened in the summer. I really do think that in January it's time for him to move on. I hope he has a good World Cup, and he maybe moves on to a Champions League club. Yeah. I mean, it's Ronaldo making it to the World Cup in Portugal.
There's no chance.
Yeah, there's no chance Ronaldo doesn't start for Portugal in the World Cup. He is the Portuguese god, and it's going to remain that way up until the day he retires, and maybe even after that. But I think in January he does get a move. I hope he does. I agree 100% with what Paul said. He's not on the same page as the rest of the team. I don't think the team plays better without him, because Merad's got a great point. Rashford's not got the finishing abilities of Ronaldo, and you put the chances that we've had in the last few games in front of Ronaldo, and you expect him to score even at 38 years old. So really, a Juventus potentially, or even a Sporting, if they make it to the knockout stages, or a Napoli, or I think someone's got to come in, and United have got to now realize that backing the manager means letting go Ronaldo on a free transfer. So really, it's up to the Glazers, and I think in the end of the day, they've put us fans into this position to divide us against a player that is a legend of not only our club, but a legend of the game, and it will go down as one of the greatest players of all time. And it's what they wanted. They want division in the fan base because a lot of pressure has been put on them to sell the club. So I really don't think this is a matter of no club wanting him, but it might be. So we never know. It's just another view.
Yeah, that's a very nice conversation about Ronaldo. Let's move on to probably the most surprising result of the week. One of the most surprising ones: Arsenal drawing at Southampton. I don't know
Was
if
it surprising?
any of you managed to watch the game or watch the highlights.
Yeah.
Of sorts. So I'll just start off the discussion. I'll introduce the game. Arsenal played well. First half, they did really well. Scored a good goal. Should have scored more. There should have been 2, maybe 3 more goals. We'll discuss the refereeing, I would say, at the end. Second half, the team came out looking leggy, looking a bit tired, looking like they weren't up for it. And Southampton, fairly enough, got their goal and defended really well for the rest of the half. So I'll start with Merad. What do you think went wrong for Arsenal? What do you think Southampton did right, or was it just Arsenal feeling tired from Thursday night, or just not feeling up for it?
I think Arteta in his press conference before the game, they asked him how he feels about young players that he's got in his squad having to play one game every 3 days on average. And you compare his response to that question to the likes of Jurgen Klopp, who always complains, as we know with Klopp, that's his get out of jail card. But Arteta came out and said, I expect them to play every 3 days. They've got the passion, they've got the energy, and I want them to knock on my door and say, Coach, I want to play, regardless of playing 3 days ago. Now, that can sound really good in a press conference that you're backing your players and there's unity and that squad is, one as a unit. But you saw, as you said, in the second half, the team fell off. And yes, we can argue the referee's decisions cost you that game. And 100%, he was a United fan. I didn't want to see Arsenal win that game, but I must say the referee's decisions cost you, like it cost us, like it cost every other team every week. We always talk about it. But no, I think Arsenal played well. You deserve to fully win that game. But as I mentioned, Southampton, I don't think it was a shock because they are your boogie team and you have really struggled to beat them in the St. Mary. So, yeah, it's not been an easy fixture for you.
Good point. Okay, moving on to Arad. Arsenal aren't fighting for the title, if we're talking seriously about it. It's good for banter, on Twitter, whatever, going back and forth. But we see the City side with Haaland. I don't think you can stop them. They'll have a blip or two, but they will annihilate teams more often than not. Arsenal's main point, I think, main aim this season is top 4 and a trophy, perhaps. What did you make of the game? Do you think Arsenal still have the quality to finish in the top 4? Do you think they're going to be one of those teams who will be battling out for the 4th spot? Or do you think they might finish comfortably 2nd or perhaps 3rd this season and just perhaps not secure it, but be comfortable in March when it comes to those tense games?
That's a good question. I really, really believe Arsenal fans are harsh on their team. Again, I said this last week. If any other team in the Premier League had won 9 out of 10 games, they'd be in a title race, and I completely understand why Arsenal fans don't want to be caught up in that conversation too seriously. But I personally do believe Arsenal are in a title race. I think you don't win 9 out of 10 games by luck. I think the performances are there. The unity, Merad said this, they're a unit. They are all on the same page, on the same wavelength. Arteta's a good coach. I think even from day one, he's come in and his tactics and the way he wants to have that team play have been set out. And of course, he didn't have the personnel to go for it, but he ground out results when he need to. And of course, now he's got the personnel and he's really playing the way he wants to play. I think Arsenal will give City a challenge. I don't think it'll be a big challenge. Don't get me wrong. I do think, come March, April time, we may be seeing City 10, 12 points clear. But I will continuously say that Arsenal are in a title race and they deserve to be where they are. And honestly, it's credit to the team and credit to Arsenal. And I don't think fans should be too negative about the talk of a title race. I get the disappointment that comes with not winning the title, but as a United fan, we want to just be there challenging, and we'd give anything right now to be in your position. I think you're 3 years ahead of us in your project. You had your manager 3 years earlier than we did, and it might take a couple years for United to get there. But I'd love it if we had, been 2 points clear of City, because I would think, hey, this is a title race, and it might not last up until April, but if you're in there by March, then you said it last week yourself, then you maybe start to believe something might come of it.
Okay, good discussion. Quickly, before we move on to the next topic, I think it would be fair if we talk about the general sense of refereeing in the Premier League. We saw, again, as you guys mentioned, the McTominay foul. There was a similar one in the Arsenal game where Jesus was pulled down in the box, and I would say mirror fashion as the United game, yet nothing was given. There were other absolutely disgusting calls. I'm not going to blame the results on the refereeing decision, because you shouldn't do that. But there were other calls not given. There were 50-50s that went Arsenal ways and weren't given. There was a headbutt. There was a choke by, I think, Southampton's left back, went unpunished. Yeah. Basically, disgusting decisions. Saka didn't dive yet, was given a yellow card for diving. Anyway, we saw those decisions. We see them on bi-weekly basis. The penalty given again for United on Sancho against Newcastle, for example. So I'll open up a quick discussion about it. Paul, what's your sense of the refereeing in the Premier League? It's supposedly the best league, certainly the most watched league in the world, yet it seems like the refereeing standards are the worst in the world.
Yeah, you put it spot on. I don't know. Are there any Premier League referees going to the World Cup? I know there weren't any last World Cup, and I'm still reminded all the way back when Wenger was still in charge of Arsenal, where he made a comment. I think it may have been against when they lost 1-0 to West Brom or something like that. Yeah, he made that same comment about how the standard of refereeing in the Premier League is so poor. And yeah, since Wenger's days, it hasn't gotten any better. I don't know why it is the way it is, but yeah. I do have to say, with the McTominay situation, I am glad to see that there is a bit of consistency, because if you compare it to the foul in the Liverpool-Man City game, which was the goal was disallowed because Fabinho got pulled, it was kind of the same manner as how McTominay, and those were both given a foul. I didn't see the Jesus one, but yeah.
Okay, next, moving on to Arad. How do you feel the standards can be improved? Because referees, as you all know, in order to do your job, you need to be accountable for it. And if you make a mistake, you're questioned, and you need to explain yourself. Such things don't really happen in the Premier League. We don't know what goes on behind closed doors. How do you feel the accountability can be improved? How do you feel the Premier League can do better?
To be honest, I completely agree with accountability. But at the same time, I have to say, no other league has, an accountability spectrum or measure of referees. So we can't really look at other leagues that have got better refereeing and say, let's just implement what they're doing into the Premier League. It just seems that they're better referees, from the ground up. But I do think that if, in any job in the world, if a player, makes a commitment to a team and then makes a foul or gives away a card or a penalty is given because of their mistake, they are accountable for the 3 points that they may have cost their team. And there's even clauses built into players' contracts, goals scored bonuses, clean sheet bonuses, because it's all about performance, reward, and accountability. And that goes for players, for managers. A manager gets sacked because they win no games in the beginning of the season, even though they might not get backing from the board, but they're accountable for the team that they've got. It seems like referees have got no accountability, get out of jail for free card every single game. They don't even need to explain their decisions. I think if we had an explanation for decisions, at least we can understand the human error behind it. I have no problem with human error. I make errors in my job. I'm sure we all make errors in our life, and that's fine. We're not expecting perfect referees. But if there's an explanation for a decision, at least you can understand, hey, he thought this and he gave this decision. And I think in American football, correct me if I'm wrong, there is a communication that is audible between the referee and the management, and everyone can know what the referee is saying, not just to each other, to the players, and explaining their decisions. So why can't we have something like that, where at least we know what's going on and we're not sort of treated like mushrooms, kept in the dark?
In the NFL, yeah, it's also announced on the loudspeaker so the fans could hear it as well in the stadium. And just any final comments from Merid, refereeing, VAR?
No, I think the boys hit it on the head. It's disgusting. It's, as we said before, if it's always a talking point, there's an issue there. But we can always hope it gets better. But until then, we have to live with the drama and the controversy. So VAR was meant to make our game more consistent and easier, but it's done the opposite. So scrap the whole thing. But yeah, moving on.
I'll move on to...
Can I just say this one last thing about the refereeing is I feel like the lack of common sense. Maybe it's I don't watch much of the other European competitions, but it just seems like the British referees just lack common sense about what is a handball, what is a foul. They would watch the VAR replay 5 or 7 times just to see if it maybe touched the hair molecule, which is connected to an arm, rather than just putting some common sense onto it, saying, okay, no, that's not a handball because it maybe grazes the arm, but it's not really a handball. I think that you don't see those issues in other leagues where they will apply some common sense rather than looking just to the letter of the law.
I think with United game against Newcastle, I don't know if you guys saw this, but the referee was Craig Pawson that game. The next week, Craig Pawson was doing a championship game. So
yeah,
accountability is one thing, but they got through his pocket the next week. And I'm sure he probably didn't make half as much money from the championship game as he would from a Premier League game. So things might improve if you get through them for their financial side of things. If you can't get through them logically, you got to get through their pockets. But yeah, something has to change, and it's not going to change overnight. We have to accept it. You know, some weeks it goes for you and you're a Southampton fan and you're happy about it and you have no complaints. Other weeks you're a United fan and Arsenal fan and you just think there must be some reason and logic to it. But we all know there isn't. So instead of complaining about it, I think we just have to accept it and move on, you know?
Can I ask a question? Maybe Daniel, you can answer this too on the subject. Would you guys prefer VAR was removed from the game today? So if you had the choice, would you have no VAR or would you continue to have VAR?
I think VAR is a technology that is worth having. We see it being applied really well in other leagues. Like VAR is not perfect. There's mistakes in every league that goes on. There's mistakes with VAR, but they're not as massive as in the league. There's many referees in the UK, as we've seen it before, are horrible. Some of them seems like they're blind. They miss things that shouldn't be missed. They miss offsides that are not offsides. They call things that shouldn't be called, and VAR improves that. Yes, there's this argument that I don't buy. Oh, the spectacle of the game, you know, I celebrated the goal, now it's disallowed. If it's disallowed for a reason, then it's disallowed for a reason. You shouldn't celebrate it. But technology, good. It's good. It helps the game.
Does everyone agree with that? I'd have to say I agree. I'd keep VAR. Paul looks like he might not.
I would have it cut back or the way it's used change. Maybe if we've already used the NFL comparison about the referees making an announcement why they're calling the plays foul. Sorry, the coaches have the opportunity to challenge a play that the referee made in the moment, and then they'll go to the video analysis. It's not automatic.
Would you give like 3 challenges a match or something? You know, what would you?
Yeah, you can maybe do 3 challenges. I don't know what the details are, but I would want to be cut back. Or maybe it's a situation of the referee on the pitch decides, hey, I'm not sure about this call. Can I see the video replay? Rather than some guy in his ear telling him, you might want to check that call. Because imagine the doubt it goes into your next decision and the decision after that. I think it'd be better if the referee himself was like, I'm not sure. Can I please check it? Rather than someone saying, are you sure about that?
Yeah.
Okay, we don't have
it needs to be tweaked in some way, because what's happening now, it's leading to this weekly discussion.
Yeah, fair enough. We don't have a lot of time. We have a lot of teams to discuss. There's Spurs, there's Chelsea, there's Liverpool. But I think if we have to finish the discussion, I think I think it would be nice if we talk about the surprising package of the season, Newcastle. I don't think anybody expected them to be where they're at. I think most of us thought, you know, top 10, top 8 perhaps, maybe push for Conference League spot, but they're flying. They have beat Spurs at home, which is Spurs are Spurs.
Which
they're
is not
bad,
difficult to do,
but beating them at home at White Hart Lane is still a challenge, I would have to say. They have a very good squad. They have no European football. They're loaded. They can spend money in January that other teams want, perhaps. Obviously not title contenders, but I have to say that they are a surprising dark horse for the top 4 challenge. What do you think, Arad? What can Newcastle achieve this season? And being backed by Saudi Arabia, should the league be scared?
Do you know what? I was going to say, when you said no one expected them to be there, I was going to jump in and say, well, I did, and look like the guy who knew everything. But no, you're right. No one expected them to be this good. I think, with the signings they made, I definitely expected them to be in and around the top 6, and maybe this large a Spurs, a United even, if we had an off season, or a Chelsea. If I expected maybe to dislodge one of them, but definitely not to be into the top 4. Yeah, it is worth noting they have played one game more than United. So they might not be in the top 4 should we win our game in hand, and then maybe it's a different conversation. But at the minute, they're doing really well. And I saw today Unai Emery is being considered for the Aston Villa job. And, he turned down Newcastle. And the first thing I thought to myself was, oh my God, imagine, what goes on in Unai Emery's head, thinking Villa's coming for me. And about a year ago, I could have gone to Newcastle and had a blank checkbook and bought any player in the world that wanted to come. And now he's having to settle for Villa, who, let's face it, won't be close to Newcastle in a really long time. So it's quite interesting that, we can make these comparisons a year on, and hindsight is great. So I think in a year from today, we'll have a very different discussion about Newcastle. Money talks, and we've seen what City do with money. So it's just a matter of time, I think, before Newcastle are rich enough to buy the league.
Okay. Oh, okay, Merad. Great.
Yeah,
Again,
I think
Newcastle?
Arad mentioned it. The fact that, first of all, Unai Emery turned down Newcastle job for Aston Villa is like, me turning down Margot Robbie for Liz Truss. Like, you gotta paint the picture there. Like, how can you turn down Newcastle? They've got more money than sense as owners. Whether it's justified or not, we can probably leave that for our next conversation we have, bringing Saudi money into the league. But City have done it, and they're doing phenomenal. Why shouldn't Newcastle? So if we're going to set a double standard and not accept Newcastle's success because it's foreign money, you got to look at every other club as well. But I'm really happy for them. I think even their squad isn't that strong yet. It's still got a lot of strengthening left. They're spending 60 million on Alexander Isak, who no other top 6 club will really spend 60 million on that player, but they'll just spend it because they can afford to. And price tags have gone out the window for them. But yeah, are they going to be top 4? I don't think so. Even top 6, I think, is a bit of a stretch. But for the games they've played, I think 2022, they've actually racked up more points this season in the year than United and Chelsea as well. So you can't knock them.
Oh. Okay, so just to end the conversation, I'm going to go to Paul. We've seen this money spent before. We had Everton a couple of years back spending big, hoping to achieve this. We had QPR years ago spending millions to try and get them out of where they had gotten themselves to. It hasn't worked for anyone apart from City yet. Are Newcastle the real deal, or do you think we have to give this project a couple of years to see what's going on?
I think Eddie Howe deserves a lot more credit than I think what he's been given. I think what he's done, both in Bournemouth and also Newcastle now, is just, I think he's a sign that he's a top manager. And I think, I have great respect and great credit. I think he deserves a lot more credit. With money, I mean, if you look, Man United is the biggest spender in the Premier League, and look like, it's good to spend money, and money always helps. But the thing what makes City so successful is not their money, it's the structure they have, is the director of football and the recruitment, finding deals. Like, how are they able to get Haaland for 50 odd million while Liverpool is spending 100 for Núñez? It's not just the money that they have, but it's the facilities and it's this whole structure that Man City have had. And I think that is what can make Newcastle successful. It's not just throwing money at the problem, but it's having a structure and a foundation of how we're going to run the club.
And if they stick to those principles and those philosophies, I think they could be successful.
Okay, so I would have to say we have the round discussion up here. Very thoughtful, very good discussions today. Thank you everyone for listening. Subscribe to our podcast / channel. If you want to
subscribe, like, and turn on notification.
If you want to listen to this amazing views, hi to all our 25 subscribers or viewers. I'm saying subscribers.
25 viewers, 7 subscribers, and Merad's watched the video 4 times. So,
all right.
Thanks, Daniel. That was great discussions.
Thank you so much. Subscribe and like. Bye bye. See you next time.